Go ahead and get going. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Reach Network webinar. I'm Michael Corral, and I'm joined by my wonderful, amazing, just been a pleasure to work with through all of this colleague, Dr. Ish Rairu.
Thank you so much, Michael, and right back at you. Hello, everyone. We are thrilled to have you with us today as we dive into the critical work of the Reach Network. We have an engaging agenda plan. It includes insights from our baseline report, practitioner perspectives, and voices from our students. And with that, I get to pass it over to Dr. Joe Bishop.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Rairu. So it is really exciting to see all of you, especially to see something that started honestly as ideas on paper. So Reach, Race, Education, and Community Healing become an actual network of educators and folks committed to testing out innovative models, but ultimately ending the school-to-prison pipeline. We spend $25 million a day in the U.S. detaining young people, $25 million. And the school-to-prison pipeline has existed for generations. And this courageous network of schools under the direction of Dr. Corral and Dr. Rairu is really doing something that the rest of the country is watching. So I don't want to put pressure on you, but also know that this work, as you know, is not easy. It takes years. It takes more than one network. It can take a lifetime, but the work you're doing is critical for our young people and our families and communities. So I just want to thank you. And we are extremely honored to partner with UC Berkeley, Dr. Bristol, Dr. Allison, and Dr. Howard and I are really, we're all watching, but are excited to see what this network will become this year, next year, and frankly, for years to come. And fingers crossed, this becomes a state kind of something that becomes a permanent investment for the state of California, because our work is not done after the Reach Network. So Dr. Rairu, Dr. Corral, are we passing it over to our colleagues at UC Berkeley?
Yep, we're just going to let Dr. J, if she's still on the line, to say hello, introduce herself in the center.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here with all of you. My name is Jacqueline Allison, and I am the director of the Center for Research on Expanding Educational Opportunity, or CREO. And I send greetings from our faculty director, Dr. Travis Bristol, who's on sabbatical, but we are so committed to this work. We believe in the importance of ensuring that all students, but especially historically resilient and marginalized populations, have access to a safe and supportive school environment with amazing teachers who see their humanity. And with that being said, this work that you all are doing, I just want to offer my profound gratitude for all that you're doing to ensure that kids feel safe and supported in their environments to reduce exclusionary discipline and suspension. It's more important than you realize. Schools, teachers, for a lot of kids, this is just their safe haven. And so thank you for working to make that safe haven better. I appreciate you all.
Thank you so much, Dr. J. Thank you, Dr. Bishop, for setting the stage for us. Today, we're focusing on key themes central to our mission: addressing disparities in school discipline, implementing restorative practices, and promoting equitable educational experiences for all young people. We'll share findings from our year one baseline report, discuss strategic recommendations for year two, and hear directly from practitioners and students about their experiences and insights. Before we get started in this engaging conversation, I'd like to take a quick 30 seconds to frame out how we hope everyone will show up today. You can see on your screen, we're asking you to stay engaged and curious. We'd like you to experience potentially some discomfort as you explore ideas, and you might even find that you have different perspectives than others. So please feel free to speak your truth, recognizing that others might have their own ideas. We suspect with a relatively short period of time and lots of ideas, there might be some uncertainty or non-closure. We just ask that you embrace and accept that. And particularly when we get out into the breakout sessions, just to make sure that you're stepping up and stepping back, or making sure that everybody has space to engage in the conversation. Lastly, to keep the dialogue going, we'd ask you kindly to keep your screen on if at all possible. So with that, Michael, I will go ahead and pass it back to you.
Thank you, Ish. for framing the tone and the day, and we'll go ahead and get started and digging into what we're here for, what we're here to discuss. So through our REACH network work, we conducted a comprehensive analysis that identified 4 critical findings that shed light on the challenges our schools within the REACH network are facing in terms of disciplinary practices and student outcomes. All right, so now we'll go ahead and walk through these findings together. First, we found persistent discipline disparities. We found that disparities in discipline practices existed across our REACH network sites, which disproportionately affected students of color and particularly Black students in terms of when we think about ethno-racial identity groups. This means that, in simple terms, students of color are more likely to face disciplinary actions compared to their peers. Second, we noticed a theme that the COVID-19's impact had on discipline rates. While the pandemic initially disrupted high and/or disproportionate discipline rates, and we know that was likely due to remote learning settings and school closures entirely, we're starting to unfortunately see a reemergence of pre-pandemic disciplinary patterns creep back into our perspective as schools have fully reopened. Third, and one of the most impactful findings that we feel we observed within our CTS team is the suspension disproportionality that affect Black students. Despite Black students representing only 7% of the student enrollment, when we think about our consolidated REACH networks school sites, Black students across the REACH network schools accounted for 11% of all suspensions. This disproportionality is consistent across not just a specific category of suspensions, but all categories of suspensions, which includes incidents of violence and defiance. Fourth, we found that REACH network schools serve a high percentage of historically marginalized communities and student groups. Specifically, REACH network schools predominantly serve, so when we look at all the school sites together and we bring this to kind of paint and draw a holistic picture of who the schools are and the challenges they face. REACH network school sites serve predominantly non-affluent, historically marginalized student populations. Students across the REACH network schools often face significant challenges, such as, and what we found, barriers to consistent attendance and challenges leading to academic opportunity gaps. So we have these 4 here. And to briefly summarize what we're seeing, these findings highlight the systemic issues that require our immediate attention. They underscore the urgent need to address inequities in our disciplinary practices and to provide better support for our most vulnerable student populations. And then before we move on, I'll end with this thought that I often reflect on, and Ish and I have a lot of time to talk and just kind of being in this space in a lot of different roles. There's been so many brilliant people that are currently in the space that I'm looking to for answers, that I'm reading their work, that I'm following their lead. They've been in the system, they've been in their system historically. And what we're seeing today, a lot of it we've known for decades, if not for decades, the last century. And so understanding these challenges is really key and critical to the first step of making meaningful changes. So just wanted to toss that in there. We realize all of these in the big ecosystem of this work that we're in, and we just want to acknowledge those that have been on the front lines doing this work in the field, in the policy space, in the research space, in the classroom space. With that, I'll hand it off to Ish to dive into how we arrived at our findings.
Thank you, Michael. Our key findings are the result of a rigorous, evidence-based approach that combined quantitative data analysis with qualitative insights. Here's how we did it. First, we conducted a comprehensive data collection. We reviewed school proposals, theories of action, and presentations from our participating schools. This gave us a deep understanding of each school's initiatives, goals, and challenges. We analyzed data from the California Department of Education, focusing on attendance, suspensions, expulsions, academic performance, and enrollment figures. The quantitative data helped us identify trends and disparities across the REACH network. We also examined LEA student and family handbooks to assess discipline policies and understand how disciplinary practices are implemented at the school level. This provided context to the data we collected. Second, we employed a multifaceted analysis approach. We didn't rely solely on numbers. We combined our quantitative data with insights from our community of practice sessions, where educators shared their experiences, challenges, and successes. And this enriched our understanding of the data. Additionally, we conducted a systemic literature review. We explored existing research on school discipline, restorative practices, and educational equity. This helped us to contextualize our findings within broader educational trends and identify best practices. Third, we engaged in collaborative validation. We worked closely with educators to validate our findings, ensuring they resonate with on-the-ground experiences. We continuously refined our conclusions through feedback and cross-referencing of data sources. This comprehensive and collaborative approach ensures that our findings are not just statistics, but reflect the real-world experiences of our school communities. It grounds our work in both evidence and lived experience, providing a solid foundation for the actionable recommendations we'll discuss a little bit later in today's session. By combining data analysis with qualitative insights, we've been able to identify the root causes of the challenges we face and chart a path forward. With a clear understanding of our key findings and how we arrived at them, we're now better equipped to discuss the strategic recommendations we've developed for year 2. The recommendations are designed to address the challenges head-on and to promote equitable, restorative-focused practices across our schools. But before we dive into those, we'll have the opportunity to hear directly from practitioners and students who are experiencing this work firsthand.
All right, thank you, Ish. Now we're excited to jump into the best part of this webinar. The reason most, if not all of you are here today, and that's to hear directly from the educators who are working on the front lines to implement restorative practices while also navigating the challenges around school discipline issues. Each of our panelist teams bring unique insights from their schools, and they've been sharing what they've learned, what's working, and where they've faced challenges. So we're talking the positive and successes, as well as the challenges and the places where they've seen opportunities for growth. This is an opportunity to hear from those who are not only committed to rethinking discipline, but who are actively putting these strategies into practice. So these 2 schools we're about to speak to and hear from are in the work right now. They'll provide examples of what it looks like to transition from punitive to restorative approaches and how these changes are influencing their school environments. So without further delay, I'd like to introduce our panelists and invite them to share their perspectives. We're going to start with the inspiring team from El Roble Intermediate. And I'll let y'all take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. Jeff Payton, 7th grade science, AVID coordinator.
Vince Ruzan, world history teacher.
Martin Renteria, Spanish teacher and Panther ambassadors coordinator.
Missy Sampson, assistant principal.
Lauren Maldonado, 8th grade student.
Savion McGee, also 8th grade student.
Awesome. So speak to our program a little bit.
Right. We have a multifaceted approach to our program. We have our PALS program, which is our after-school mentoring program for students. We also have our Foundations for Academic Success program, which targets our academic in-school items. We have after-school tutoring, which is available to all of our students. And we also have our ambassadors, which is a peer mediation conflict resolution program that is offered during one period throughout the school day.
So how did we get here? Okay, so how did we get here? In the past, what we noticed was that we had a pretty, you would say, like an unhappy school community. We had teachers that weren't happy with some of the behaviors and the things and the climate. We had teachers that weren't happy, students that weren't happy, and even community members. And so what we were experiencing in our schools were increases in fighting, increases in detentions, bullying, and we saw some of that conflict was often unresolved. And so, you know, we could have all kinds of discipline in place. We had no contact contracts, suspensions and things, but again, it's unresolved conflicts and we're dealing with repeat offenders. And we just wanted to do something to change that environment. at our site and in our community.
So goals.
Yes, please.
So some of the things that we really are working on currently is that we're working on to integrate those restorative practices into what we're doing. Not just working with our students, but now trying to grow that to our entire campus. And eventually not just training ourselves, but then training people at our school and eventually growing that to the rest of the district. One of the other things that we're trying to do is decrease that detention and suspension rate, really trying to work with what's the root cause of those issues.
Right. Some of our outcomes have been that we've developed this Panther Pals mentorship program. We have about 17 8th grade students. We're also including our 7th grade students in a few weeks to make sure that we target all of our campus. We are also trying to train our we have our staff, our new admin team coming in. They are training restorative practices along with us. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think coming into a school that's already like on the precipice of change was really inspiring. And it was a pleasure to meet these guys over the summer and get into that restorative practice work right away to frame in what we were going to do for this school year. I think as an administration, just kind of framing all the choices that we make within discipline and how we manage meetings and everything like that, just kind of framing it around how can we impact students in a positive way and turn that culture around has been kind of the guiding thing for all of us as we go through. So that has been like at the forefront of every decision and what we're making and all the decisions we make in school-wide, discipline, PLCs, all of those things are all about how can we change that culture and frame it in that restorative mindset to make the school not only a better place to be, but also a place to work and feel like we can actually impact students into a positive way.
For this challenges, some of the challenges, right, has been how do we bring everybody up to speed? So with our new admin, we're so used to doing a lot of this work independently. We hadn't really had to ask anybody for permission for things because we didn't have any leadership. It was one of those where it was kind of put out the fires, right? And now it's how do we bake all of these different systems into the actual school culture? And so working with admin to see where our programs fit into MTSS or PBIS, and then also trying to really see how do we get good so that we can start to train other people. So as we're getting good with our practices, how do we further sharpen our skills and then pass that knowledge on to other people?
Right. And through our work, we've been able to to perform empathy interviews with our students. And oftentimes these interviews resulted in students not understanding why they're being suspended, why they're getting detentions. And so this eventually led us to develop this program that we have, our Panther Pals program, develop it and help students navigate through all of these different things, the communication between staff, students, teachers, admin, the entire community within that school. And I would say that it's led to a pretty good approach. It's led to some healthy and positive relationships and restored some of the positivity within our campus.
I would say the first 30-day pulse point would be a good place to be. I feel like everyone's kind of at a space where, okay, we do things a little bit differently. And I think everyone's feeling a little bit of the pressure out of the room, and the communication between kids and teachers and admin and teachers and admin to kids has been positive if you wanted to like take that first 30-day pulse.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it really feels like we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Aerobic team. And I hate to cut it off, but this is why we're definitely going to dedicate and created this session to have that breakout space. And for everybody on the call, I want you all to be thinking as you hear, or you just heard Aeroblaze, a little bit of a journey, a sample of what they're doing, what they've done. How does that connect to you possibly? Your school, your team of teachers, your community, because you're going to have the opportunity to select which breakout team you go and engage with, whether that be Aeroble or the team we have coming up from Crete Academy. So I'll move it for the sake of time, to give Crete their opportunity, kind of share a little bit about themselves, the goals they had coming into the Reach Network project, and then where they've landed with some of those goals and where they aspire to be. So I'll hand it off to Aaron and Brett.
All right. Good afternoon, or yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brett Mitchell. I am the co-founder of Creed Academy. I want to start just by expressing my gratitude to everybody that has made this possible. I always speak when we have any folks that visit the school and ask, how they can help with our mission. If you have a dollar, give a dollar. If you have a minute, give a minute. But the most important thing is wisdom and, supplying the how-to of what we do is so important, because I know, and as you know, it takes all of us to really impact the lives of our kiddos. So I want to thank everyone for being involved with this. Creed Academy is a charter school located in South Central Los Angeles. We have 2 campuses and a very unique mission. We serve families that are unhoused. So currently, close to 40% of our student body is unhoused, meaning kids that are, living in motels, cars, truly in a very challenging situation. The founder, Hattie Mitchell, during her time, developed a harmony program, which aimed to support these families, not just with physical support or housing support, but most importantly, with wraparound services that will lead to sustainability and overall, creating children who are whole and competitive academically because they receive the support needed. So we started out with 100 students in 2016. We have now tripled in size, so we're slightly over 300 students. And our program, as I said, we do assist and support with housing and shelters, but we also make sure every student has an opportunity to receive counseling. We have a Harmony Center at both of our campuses that has, on any given day, at least 5 MSWs who are managed by LCSWs to give support to all of our students. We realized very early that our kids they just needed more. And given the current funding through LAUSD, there were some challenges with providing everything that our program sought to do. So medical, dental, vision, hearing, parenting classes, food pantry, transportation, additional services, making sure kids had access to extracurricular activities. All of those things are not really factored into a normal school budget. And so, most importantly, the mental health perspective of all of our students. So the goal was for every student at any moment to be able to receive mental health services if needed, therapy services. So currently we have 81 students receiving those services out of the nearly 300 students. 85% improvement in behavior reported by the MSWs on both campuses. We have a 0% suspension and expulsion rate for the last couple of years. And a lot of that goes into what are the vision and mission and the core values of the school were through the founder, she would challenge all of the administrators with the students that were having the toughest time with behaviors. Have you done everything you possibly can do to reach that student, to provide support for that student? Have you referred that student to the Harmony program? Is that student receiving counseling? Has that family done an intake? Are you sure, that student doesn't have a bad tooth, a medical issue? Did they eat breakfast today? So we really go through a process that is a little more demanding than the average elementary school to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our families. And in order to do that, we partner with a lot of schools Very fortunate to partner with UCLA. I'm a double Bruin myself. I went for undergrad and law school. And, you know, without partnering with the MSWs at UCLA, at USC, at Pepperdine, you know, being able to have 5 or 6 mental health care folks at the school each day, it would not be possible to serve an entire school. So, you know, we're very, very grateful for the support. Our challenges initially, a lot of our staff, when we first opened, their go-to was suspension. When we had extreme behaviors or when we had issues with students. And our challenge was really changing the mindset of our staff to one of restoration, one of providing peace and providing strategies and critical thinking skills, and, you know, really being emotionally aware and looking at our students through an empathy lens, rather than, you know, the student is a challenge, like here's an opportunity to really reach this student. After our first year, we made a lot of headway getting the mindsets of our staff and administrators to change. But ultimately, now as a school, to a person, everybody understands the vision and the focus is of restorative practices. It's not to punish students. It's not to have them away from school, because we also notice, especially after COVID, that a lot of times the school is the only place where kids may receive 3 meals a day, may go to a therapist, may see a doctor, or may have healthy interactions, you know, to really build what is necessary to be, you know, successful. So
Brett,
yes,
I'm gonna
I'm
pop
out of
in really
time.
quick. So again,
All right.
super powerful stuff. I'm actually gonna get to join you when we go into the breakout. So I'm really just inspired and excited to hear about this even more. And then again, those of you on the call, be thinking about which room makes the most sense, which school team, which school site, which grade levels, which initiatives, to really have a open and transparent conversation. And then just for some perspective, this is being recorded, our main space. Once we go into the breakout rooms, that will not be recorded, that will not be shared out, so we can really have some authentic conversations, questions, responses, challenges, successes in there. But before we do that, we want to move to what is probably the most powerful part of this conversation, aside from having the school teams here, is having 2 students being able to volunteer and stepping up and having the courage to speak to all of you. I know I barely have the courage to do so, so I'm glad if I'm playing it off like I do. I'm winning there. But at the end of the day, the changes we're talking about in school discipline and restorative practices are all about creating environments where students feel safe, supported, and valued. So the students today both attend El Roble Intermediate, where the Panther Pals program, if you can think back a few minutes to El Roble's couple of slides there, has played a critical role in conflict resolution. The 2 Roble students have been actively involved in the program and will share their experiences with conflict resolution and how the program has impacted their school environment. So we are thrilled, absolutely thrilled to have you both and have you with us today, and to speak to the real on-the-ground impact of your school's initiatives. So everyone, please join me in welcoming the students with a couple snaps on your screen from El Roble Intermediate. I'd like whoever wants to pop on first, or if you all are in the same room, maybe just say your name really quickly, and then you can kind of go through. We have some prompts there, but really just want you to be transparent, feel comfortable with however you want to speak.
Hi, my name's Lauren. I'm in 8th grade, and this has really affected our school environment in a positive way, and everyone's much more open-minded about change, and it feels more positive, and it feels safer. There's a difference in how conflicts are being handled. There's not as many big fights and conflicts because everything is stopped early on or prevented early on. And small things don't turn into big things and they don't escalate. Thank you.
I'm Savion McGee, and I'm in 8th grade. And my experience with the Panther Pals program is been a very good experience for me and the other people that are in it. Mostly like leads around the building your leadership skills, and it's really good for me and the other people in the group too. It sort of led into the Panther Ambassadors last year. I think, yeah, last year. It led into the Panther Ambassadors last year from just that. So it's cool to like feel like it got the word. Like I'm a part of something bigger now.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you.
And since we have a few minutes, and this is not to put anybody on the spot here with two students, what would you say you've noticed or not noticed with your teachers, your staffs, the way they interact with you, relationships with you? Has that shifted? Has that helped? Has that not been part of your experience in terms of things you've experienced so far to this point?
So my interactions with staff have been really positive and they've been very helpful. And I feel that they've also been very inclusive and that they're very helpful.
Yeah, the same thing she said, but yeah, pretty much, yeah.
And Aerobe team, would you say there's anything else you can just have some open dialogue here with the students that you've noticed from your perspectives that you're seeing with the students?
I could chime in. I feel like we had some pretty honest conversations in the beginning and how we manage conflicts and what we should do if we have a conflict with another student. So I have felt like students approach me like, hey, I'm not getting along with so-and-so. And so I had kind of put that out there of like, you know, we don't press people at lunch. We don't do those kind of things. Like you can handle it a different way. And I'm starting to see those kind of interactions with students having that conversation with me so I can refer them to go through a conflict mediation prior to me running and chasing something at lunch. And so that has been an impact I've seen. The kids are starting to catch on that I don't just have one pathway to solve this problem or to ask a question. And that's kind of been an impact in how we kind of do things a little bit differently. Jeff, you've been in some of those meetings.
Yeah, I was just thinking about if the students feel more empowered because of some of the peer-to-peer conflict mediation, rather than relying on us as adults that solve and come to conclusions. Do you feel like this is something that kind of is tossing it back to you and empowering you as students? I don't know if you could speak to that.
Yeah, and I feel that a lot of students also feel more comfortable with the mediations because it is students helping resolve this conflict, and I feel that they feel more confident as well to go to this mediation, and they feel more confident that their problem can be solved because it is students helping them, and it is students that have gone through or may have gone through the same thing as them, and it makes them feel more comfortable as well.
Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you both for just being here, for giving us a little piece of your day. I'm sure you're very upset about missing some class time, so we want to make sure you have time to get back there. But from here, we're going to transition into going to our breakouts, and I'll hand it over to Ish to kind of lead us through that process.
Moving to these breakout sessions, you'll find that each room is going to be designed to be interactive. Feel free to pick whichever room aligns best with your school's context or your other context. Perhaps it aligns with challenges you're facing. Michael and I will be in the rooms to help guide the discussion along with the presenters, but please come equipped with your questions. Please feel free to share your experiences while you're there. It's time to collaborate with everybody who's been a part of this work. And with that, let's just go ahead and dive in, and we'll head into these different breakouts right now.
Welcome back, everyone. We are so pressed for time, and I told the folks in our breakout with Crete that real live feedback is Ish and I need to exit this webinar and give it over to our school teams, because that's where the real meaningful conversations are happening. And so really regretful that we had to close those out. But we do want to make sure we finish out, give you all the information we have, and just be able to tie this all together. So welcome back. We hope and we know the breakout conversations were valuable, and we know you all took so much away from it. And at the same time, apologies for not giving you and making sure there was more time to re-engage and have those meaningful conversations with the school teams. So we are going to shift our focus to how we at the Reach Network are turning these lessons from year one into actionable strategies for year two. Our recommendations are directly informed by the findings we discussed earlier. So we heard Ish talk about findings in our reports, and then particularly around disproportionate rates of suspension and supporting historically marginalized student groups. These are not the fixes. We know they're not the fixes, but our greatest hope is that our recommendations will result in and turn into these long-term strategies for sustainable change that we're all looking for. With that, Ish, I know we got to be quick here, but I'll pass it to you.
I'll be very brief. Thank you, Michael, and thank you to the El Roble team, and apologies for getting cut off. I know there's lots more to discuss there. Based on our comprehensive analysis and key findings from year one, we developed these 9 strategic recommendations to guide the Reach Network's efforts in year two. These recommendations are designed specifically for the networks, and they focus on promoting equitable, restorative focused practices across California. But these recommendations aren't necessarily for every single site, every single place in California. We do think that we want to share them with you today, though, because we think that they likely apply to a variety of school systems. And before I pass it to Michael to provide us with a little bit more information about impact, we want to take literally just 1 minute and put our short survey link in the chat box. If you would take this one quick minute to provide us with your responses on that survey. And then after a minute, we'll come back together and Michael will talk a little bit more about the recommendations and impact. So we'll just take 1 minute for a quick survey right now. Michael, I know folks are going to need just a little bit more time, but I'm happy to pass it over to you
Yeah, let's go ahead and get started with those. And folks, if you're focused on finishing should take no more than a minute or two, depending on the feedback, but we can get going and you can just listen to me in the background. So let's go ahead and move to the key deep dive on key recommendations for impact. So among our 9 recommendations, 2 really stood out as particularly impactful in addressing some of our most pressing challenges that we're seeing. These recommendations that we're discussing here on this slide are directly linked to our key findings, and based on our findings, we feel these are the key drivers for meaningful change in our schools. So the first recommendation you'll see there we'll focus on is to implement comprehensive whole school restorative practices. This recommendation directly addresses, we think back to what we talked about with key findings, our key finding number 3 from the report, which involves the disproportionate suspensions of Black students. Shifting to restorative practices, we found is critical for reducing the reliance on punitive and exclusionary discipline, which often disproportionately impacts Black students. From our experience in year one, we learned that schools need extensive support to transition away from punitive approaches, and sustaining these changes requires consistent, ongoing support. It's not just as easy as let's just stop doing it. We heard this directly in our conversations. It takes so much to really shift our mindsets and be able to feel empowered as educators, and also safe and willing and bought in to this entire culture shift. I'll move to the second recommendation here for the sake of time. And that is to invest in culturally responsive and sustaining professional development for all school staff, from from staff, from teaching assistants to teachers to school leaders to superintendents, whoever is in that building, which directly addresses our key finding number 4, and that's that the REACH network schools serve historically marginalized communities and students. By equipping educators with culturally responsive and sustaining skills, we found that we can ensure all staff are better prepared to support students that identify from historically marginalized identities and backgrounds, and then improving both academic and social outcomes. These 2 recommendations, when we talk about here on the slide, post-school restorative practices and culturally responsive and sustaining professional development, are what we find to be critical REACH network factors for REACH network success in year 2. They address what we have found as the root causes of so many of the disparities we've identified, and they're providing us with the foundation for systemic long-term change. All right, so as we conclude, we got 2 minutes here. That was way faster. We were trying to get through those last few slides that we were anticipating, but we'd like to express our gratitude to all the panelists, the presenters today, Caitlin and Geneva from the UCLA CTS communications team for putting all this together, and most importantly, the students, if y'all are still on, who shared your experiences, your voice, and just so powerful to have you here today.
So offer my gratitude, Michael. The engagement and the dedication that everybody is showing, I think, is absolutely inspiring. And I'm looking forward to continuing this work to create equitable and supportive learning environments for students across California.
And we do realize this is a brief ending, but rest assured, we're going to be able to send a follow-up with links to the webinar, with links to the reports. If you're not on our mailing list already, we have your information if you registered for this webinar. We'll be able to follow up with those things, as well as a link to the survey. We know how I know how annoying surveys can be, but it is so meaningful to hear from you all what we should be doing, because that's who matters. You are on the ground. You are in school buildings working directly with young people, and that's the work that we need to be focused and engaged on. So without hearing and receiving that information from you, we hope we can do the great work, but we don't know. And so through these feedback you can give us, we can know we're doing the right work. All right, well, thank you, everyone. Ish, thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and to continued collaboration, folks.